UFO Story 2014. It came out of the night sky like a shard of glass, piercing the darkness with arcs and swoops, like a meteor but as silent as a spear. A group of tramps below scratched their heads as they drank their whiskey, momentarily nonplussed. Then they returned to their drink. Then it swept past officers and skyscrapers before turning suddenly and shooting past Big Ben before the seconds ticked. A brilliant photo opportunity was missed by the sleeping populace. It shot then it shot off at an incredible speed before stopping suddenly in mid-air and landing in a sea of glowing red and green lights on the crisp damp grass of Hyde Park. It was 4 a.m., there was no one about, and one of the most momentous days of mankind was being observed by the occasional squirrel and rabbit. The craft changed colour from black to silver to then being completely translucent. The large oak trees behind were visible, and to all purposes it was not there. An hour later Simon set off on his paper round. As usual, he decided to take a short cut through the park. He was 11 years old. He was a loner and a dreamer. His paper round gave him just enough money to buy the books he loved to read and escape into. H. G. Wells, Roald Dahl, and if he was feeling brave, Stephen King. He disliked school and enjoyed the freedom which his paper round brought. He always cut across the park unless it was raining. He hated the mud. He loved to be clean and tidy. He didn't think they would thank him at school if he brought in a load of mud with him. He got to the park early, as he had whizzed round his paper round. He liked to treat it like a sports exercise and see how quickly he could complete it. The sun was just coming up and the beautiful oak trees were bathed in crisp light as the morning rolled in. He walked briskly past the park, across the park, his Adidas trainers keeping him buoyant, as if he was on a newly laid carpet. His bag felt light with all the newspapers delivered. He saw a battered tennis ball on the ground and picked it up, bouncing it in front of him as he bobbed along. This is a great morning, he thought. Then he threw the ball at the large oak tree 50 yards in front of him, aiming for the dead center. To his amazement, it bounced back. He picked it up and threw it again, half in shock, and again it bounced back with a slight thud. This was beyond amazing, he thought. He walked up to where the ball had hit, and he saw nothing, but he felt some kind of crackling energy in the air like static. Closer and closer he crept, until his nose touched a warm solid object like glass. He jumped back, and then he reached his hand out to touch it with his outstretched palm. He could feel the quietly pulsing energy flood his palm and fingers. Instantly it filled with color, smoky gray, then silver, then jet black. To his amazement, it was an alien spaceship, a UFO. He had some interest in extraterrestrials and had read a few books about them, but he thought most of them were hoaxes or wishful thinking. A lot of them were government projects or stealth bombers, but this looked like the real deal, a UFO in London. It was lucky there was no one about, he thought. And then, in an instant, it changed back again. He felt honored to be the only witness. He didn't see any little green men. Any color would have been all right. Whoever they weren't saying. Despite his momentous discovery, he still had to get to school. All through the lessons, he thought of nothing else. The hours went by so slowly, and it was tortuous as usual. He thought of telling someone, but he knew that no one would believe him, and he didn't want to be bullied, so he kept quiet. At last the school bell rang, and he ran as fast as possible to the park. It was about half a mile away, and when he got there his shirt was drenched with sweat, and he was panting heavily. He saw the tennis ball on the ground. He looked around to see if anyone was watching. He walked towards the invisible craft. This time there was no thud. It had gone. He knelt on the grass with tears in his eyes. "Where are you?" he cried. "It should have been there, but wasn't." He walked home with his head down. He knew no one would believe him, but now he almost didn't believe himself. That night he lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. He could see the stars through his window and wondered to which star it may have gone. He was the only person on earth who knew there was life on other planets, but no one listened or knew. Just then he saw a star in the sky twinkling, and then it appeared to move. Suddenly it shot across like a meteor, then disappeared. Then it reappeared like a flashing light, and he knew. A smile spread across his face. He watched it get further and further away, then boom! It zapped out of view at mind-boggling speed. It could only be one thing. Simon crawled into and slept into his bed and slept so soundly and so deeply that even a little green man tapping at his window wouldn't have woken him.